Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider Television, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don Staley and his crew, they do a great job. Alongside Rodney Orr, I am Gary Harris, and I am back. Off last week due to COVID. Man, that messed everything up for me. Christmas, trip to Dallas. But I want to thank my main man, Stu McCann, also Matthew Travis for doing a great job last week. But I'm back just in time for the College Football Playoff National Championship game, Rodney.
Be back.
You know, COVID couldn't keep me down. In fact, I spanked COVID pretty good. I just had to wait until they told me I was allowed to come back. I was ready to come back earlier than was allowed. But I'm feeling it, Rod. Alabama's back in the national championship game. The Crimson Tide, of course, looking for the program's 7th national championship under Nick Saban. This is their 9th title game trip in his 15 seasons. Absolutely unbelievable. Alabama took care of Cincinnati in workmanlike fashion, 27-6 on Friday in the CFP semifinal at the Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas. Brian Robinson was named the offensive MVP of the game after going for an Alabama Bowl record, 204 yards on 26 carries. Well, Will Anderson was named the defensive MVP as he went for 6 total tackles, including 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. Bryce Young was efficient. They didn't ask as much of him. Tennessee plays that weird, 3-2-5, something like that, Rodney. They play soft coverage. They've got those great corners. They did not want to give up, a 75-yard strike to Jamison over the top. So Alabama kind of just took what they gave them. Did have that big touchdown Bryce did there to Corey Brooks. But, one thing about Alabama, that's the beauty of this offense. You know what? You want to play conservatively, they'll just take their time and pick you apart. Bryce, 17 of 28 for 181 yards. Did have 3 touchdowns, a pick. The story, though, was probably the Tide defense. No, probably to it. It was. Alabama did not allow a touchdown in the game. Remember, Cincinnati came in as the 4th-ranked team in the country, averaging over 400 total yards of offense and 36.5 points per game. Bearcats went for just 218 total yards and 6 points against Alabama. It was a team effort. Here's what Brian Robinson Jr. had to say about giving his all for the Crimson Tide following his bowl record-breaking performance.
I literally put all my heart into this, this university, that team, that locker room. I don't never want to let, my brothers down. I don't never want to let my coaches down. I don't never want to let this university down. So, I just give it everything I got, every chance I get. And it's just a reflection of just all the hard work we just put in during the week, All
right, Rod, let me bring you in for analysis here. And let's start with Brian Robinson Jr. This is a guy at Hillcrest High School, just down Highway 69 South here in Tuscaloosa. 5th-year senior, had played a lot of football, but had never been a starter until this season. Came back when a lot of people thought he might go ahead and try to go to the NFL draft, where he might have been a 4th or 5th round pick. Heck, man, he might be a 2nd or 3rd round pick now. He's had a solid year, but this was his best effort of the season when it was needed, because again, Cincinnati's game plan, and I'm in total agreement with it, they were just not going to get beat over the top for a 75 or 80-yard play. They took it away, and then Alabama just fed Brian Robinson. Yeah,
Brian had a great game. And look, for him to have a great game, the offensive line has to perform as well. They did a fantastic job, obviously, grinding it out. You mentioned the bowl record, 204 yards rushing. Brian now 1,268 yards rushing on the year. Gary, 14 touchdowns, has really, really good numbers, 32 receptions. And listen, he hasn't been healthy the last third of the year. This break between the SEC championship game and this game against Cincinnati certainly gave him a lot of opportunity to rest up and get healthy.
One negative is more injuries. Of course, John Mechie didn't play. Chris Allen has not been able to make it back, but Emil Ekiyor, the right guard, goes down during the game. But the freshman, J.C. Latham, I thought came in and played very, very well.
Thought he played extremely well, Gary. We've seen Alabama do this before. Plug in young players that are inexperienced, that were highly recruited, and they perform well, and J.C. Latham did a fantastic job.
Well, on defense, we were hopeful, and indeed, Jalen Armour-Davis did make it back, but he really struggled, Rodney. He was not himself. In fact, had to come out of the game. But Kyrie Jackson, the highly talented junior college cornerback, because Alabama's getting low in numbers at corner, came in the game and had not played a lot this year and played very well.
Yeah, Kyrie's a fantastic athlete. I mean, he's got great size, great length, Gary, and just an incredible athlete. Like you said, the only thing with him is the experience factor, but he played extremely well.
This defense, much maligned to start the season in terms of, I guess, the expectations that fans had for the defense. Pete Golding caught a lot of heat. But you know what, Rodney? They've just gotten a little bit better, it seems like to me, every week. And to hold a team like Cincinnati to a little over 200 yards of total offense and 2 field goals. Phenomenal effort.
I think it was a fantastic effort. I mean, when you look front to back, Gary, I thought, up front, Fedarian Mathis had a tremendous game. DJ Dale got a sack. Again, Fedarian had a couple of passes batted down, had a couple of plays behind the line of scrimmage. Dallas Turner was very effective. Of course, Will Anderson. I thought Toa had a big play on that batted down pass. It might have been a touchdown if he had not knocked it down. I thought the secondary, Jordan Battle, DeMarco Helms. We talked about Kool-Aid and also Curry playing really well at the corner. But what about Brian Branch? He continues to play extremely well. Had a couple of big plays, had a pass batted down, but he also had a really big-time pass breakup that I thought was a next-level play.
And back to the offense, I thought it showed why Alabama's a championship team. We know what Jameson Williams is capable of, but you know what? He was satisfied with catching the ball underneath. And Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner, this is an example in a me generation. He's a team-first guy. He was willing to sacrifice his numbers for the good of the team. And you say to yourself, well, isn't that what he's supposed to do? Not every quarterback wants to do that, particularly a guy like Bryce Young, who's put up the kind of numbers he's put up. But it was obvious to everybody what Alabama's game plan was. And I thought that the fact that Bryce Young did what he was asked to do, he was efficient, he didn't try to make plays when they weren't there. That's what championship caliber quarterbacks do. Numbers are one thing, but winning the game is the bottom line, and I thought that's what we saw from both Jameson Williams and Bryce Young in this game.
I thought Bryce did a nice job on a couple of third down plays, Gary, that when they were long yardage situations to help Alabama get in position. On one time, they converted a fourth down run. Did a really nice job there. Jameson Williams, you talked about, you know what, maybe the most impressive thing he did was when the guy knocked his helmet off, Jameson kept his cool.
Got 15 yards out of it.
Right.
That's absolutely right. All right, now it's time for Coach Talk. In last month's SEC Championship game, now Georgia was about a touchdown favorite against Alabama. The Crimson Tide certainly used being the underdog as motivation in that game. In next Monday night's rematch, Georgia again is favored, this time by 2.5 points. But Crimson Tide head coach Nick Saban doesn't believe the point spread will be a factor for these teams in the national championship game.
It's important for our players to know what they need to do to be able to continue to have success in the next game, regardless of what happened in the last game, and regardless who was favored and who was underdogs and all that kind of stuff. Everybody has pride in performance. Everybody wants to go play well, and we certainly want to do everything as coaches that we can to help our players go out and play well and compete well in the game.
Rodney, real quickly before we go to the break, consistency in performance, the process, Nick Saban lives by that. At the same time, these players, I think, will take it personally that they won 41-24 and they're underdogs again. I think they'll use that to fuel them in terms of their motivation for this game on Monday night.
Yeah, and I think, too, Gary, a lot of people talk about beating a team twice in 1 year. I think Nick Saban does a better job of anyone in the country getting his players to focus on the things that actually contribute to winning and blocking out all those external narratives.
Think about this. The beating a great team twice, it is difficult. But you know what? It's like the old bully in the schoolyard. When he beats somebody up, I don't think the kid that gets beat up comes back the next day and says, well, no, I think it's going to be harder for you to beat me up this time. Let's go again. You beat somebody once, you can beat them twice. Bad analogy, I guess. Still to come on Tider Insider Television. Georgia was impressive in the Orange Bowl, beating the socks off Michigan. But can they get revenge on the Crimson Tide? We'll discuss that when we come back. And Alabama basketball got a big win to begin SEC plays last week at home against Tennessee. We'll have more coming up on Tider Insider. Plus, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. We'll be taking them all. Phone number, as always, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at TITV@WVUA23.com, or you can tweet at us at hashtag TITV so that we'll see it. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The one, the only, Tider Insider TV returns right after this.
I was wanting to get a real shower, not a Gatorade bath, because I want to get focused on Alabama. They got a 5-6 hour head start. So I'm not, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not interested in celebrating that. We'll look back on that win, and that'll be great, but we're focused on the task ahead.
I don't know if focus is the right word, maybe obsessed. You heard Kirby Smart right there. No interest in celebrating that Orange Bowl semifinal victory. He's got one thing on his mind, and that's Alabama. Not only to win the national championship, which has eluded Georgia since 1980. It's eluded Kirby since he's been there. But you better believe he wants that win over Nick Saban. And here we go. We get the national championship game with Alabama and Georgia. I don't know what people about around the other parts of the country think about it, but here it's football kind of the way it was meant to be. I think this season, when you look back on it now, you could see these two teams on a collision course, not just once, but twice.
Well, yeah, you could.
Yeah, unbelievable, Rodney. All right, welcome back to TITV, sponsored by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Alabama has dealt with a rematch in the national championship game once before. Remember, 2011 season, Alabama lost to LSU 9-6 in Tuscaloosa in the game of the century in overtime, then came back in the BCS championship game at the Superdome and blew the doors off LSU 21-0. Now, Alabama doesn't want that to happen. They don't want to lose the rematch. They want to sweep Georgia. Georgia, though, had been the top-ranked team in the country ever since Alabama lost to A&M. They had been dominant. As we said, they were a solid favorite over Alabama going into the SEC championship game. Got beat, but they bounced back. Not only did they bounce back, Rodney, I think that's why a lot of people, once again, are kind of looking at Alabama's underdog. They just destroyed Michigan. Let's be honest. I hate to say this, but it's what I felt like. That opening drive, as soon as Georgia scored, I said game over, didn't you?
I did. I looked at the facial expressions of Jim Harbaugh, and I wondered, did they even expect to have an opportunity to win this game? I mean, it didn't look like they did. And but look, I think the thing that surprised me, and I hadn't watched a lot of Michigan, Gary, I bought into, those defensive ends that they had, Aiden Hutchinson, number 55. I thought that they were really going to be good. They were going to be able to pressure Stetson Bennett, maybe slow down that Georgia run. They didn't come close. I mean, This reminded me of Notre Dame 2012.
Bennett 20 of 30, 313 and 3 touchdowns. He was fantastic. But again, he wasn't facing Alabama. Alabama has been his kryptonite these last two seasons. People say, what about Stetson Bennett? But the guy's pretty good. I mean, he's been terrific. I mean, he's been awesome. It's only been Alabama, which now is the final measuring stick for Georgia. If he overcomes that and is able to lead them to a win on Monday night, he'll go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in Georgia history. He loses, not so much.
He's done a fantastic job. Like you said, Gary, I think he is vastly underrated. I think, obviously, he's got nice ability to throw the ball. He manages the offense extremely well. I think he brings a chemistry to that team, really. That J.T. Daniels, who was a five-star player, transferred from USC, obviously a lot more skills as a quarterback, if you want to call it that. But I think when you talk about a guy that can manage an offense, he's got mobility. He brings something to that team, Stetson Bennett, that I think gives them a chemistry.
Score predictions coming later, but Rod, let's say this about Bennett and Georgia. They are who we thought they were. They got whipped against Alabama. Because Alabama, let's be honest, everybody keeps talking about, well, Georgia, wasn't ready, it wasn't important to Georgia. That is the biggest crock that I've ever heard. Georgia wanted that game. They wanted the SEC championship. They wanted 13-0. They wanted to knock Alabama out of the playoffs. So that doesn't even add up. Having said that, they're really, really good. But so is Alabama. I'm really kind of disappointed that some people have tried to knock the luster off of what Alabama was able to do against them on December 4th.
It's kind of amazing. We're not just talking about fans. We're talking about analysts, guys who played the game, played college, played NFL, that are now analysts saying that basically it was a fluke, that Georgia really didn't play their best game in that game. Well, maybe they didn't, but you have to at least give Alabama credit for part of that, I would think. But no, Alabama played extremely well. The question we had going into this game, Gary, that first game, the SEC championship game, is who has Georgia played to really determine how good they are? And I think that's what Alabama exposed in that game.
It is going to be a doozy. Our score predictions coming up at the end of the show. Let's talk a little hoops. Last Wednesday night, Alabama got a big SEC opening win over 14th-ranked Tennessee, 73-68. Crimson Tide closed the game on an 11-2 run to get that win. Alabama now 15th in the AP Top 25, 20th in the coaches poll. Crimson Tide on the road this week in Gainesville tomorrow night to play Florida. Alabama head coach Nate Oates has an idea of the type of environment that his team is going to encounter tomorrow night at the O'Connell Center.
The environment was pretty good 2 years ago. I mean, we were up 22, I think, at one point. They made the big comeback, and their crowd got behind them there late in the game and overtime. And I think it's good. We've already played at Memphis, so they had a good environment there. It's good we played out in Seattle against Gonzaga.
Alabama, the defending SEC regular season and tournament champions. The Alabama women, man, 5 in a row now over Auburn. They held on Sunday at Coleman Coliseum to beat the Tigers 56-53. They led by 11 at halftime, had a nice lead there in the fourth quarter. Auburn, though, to their credit, came back. That's what happens in rivalry games, but Alabama able to hold them off and get the big win. The Tide women host Mississippi State this Thursday night at 6 p.m. Well, still to come on Tider Insider TV, Najee Harris had a record-breaking night. Pittsburgh's big win over the Browns last night. We'll have more when we come back. And up next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. We want to talk with you, Tider Insider Nation. Give us a call. We'll be back after this. Well, last night, Najee Harris broke the Pittsburgh Steelers rookie rushing record. Harris breaks Harris's record. Franco Harris, the great Franco Harris out of Penn State, said it back in, I want to say 72 or so. But Najee owns it now, man. He's got 1,172 yards on the season, including a huge game last night, over 180 yards. That touchdown sealed it right there. Had that unbelievable stiff arm. He has had a great rookie year for a team that, you know, doesn't have a great offensive line. Big Ben Roethlisberger last night, probably his final start. Watch the stiff arm coming up here again, Rod. Watch this. Watch it. This is like Derrick Henry, man. Get out of my way. Najee Harris, some kind of football player. All right, welcome back into TITV alongside Rodney Orr and Gary Harris. Let's go out on the phone lines, and our pal John from Bessemer is with us. Hey, John.
Gary, what's going on, man? Roll Tide.
Yes, sir.
Hey, man, I went on that game Monday. I hope we do win it. And I was wondering, the players we got now, are they coming back next year, man? Later.
All right, John. You know, that's the thing about this Alabama football team. And I knew that they were young, but just register with you sometime until I heard Nick Saban say I think they started 3 seniors on Friday against Cincinnati. If they win it Monday night, I mean, they're going to be a huge favorite to win a 3rd in a row next season. A large portion of this football team, including Bryce Young, is going to return next year.
Yeah, they'll lose Evan Neal up front. Obviously, we don't know what Emil Ekiyor will do if he'll come back. He certainly could. But they'll have plenty of talent up front offensively, a lot of young receivers. Bryce Young, obviously, really good stable of running backs. Got Jahmyr Gibbs coming in. Defensively, a lot of players coming back up front.
Including
in the
Will
secondary.
Anderson.
Yes, Dallas Turner, Drew Sanders, all the defensive linemen. So they'll have a really good group. Now, they will lose Fedarian Mathis, who I think has been a heart and soul to that defensive front.
Yeah, they're going to lose some juniors. Like you said, Jameson Williams probably will go. Evan Neal, we're confident will go. But still, that's going to be a loaded football team next season. And the beat goes on. What can you say, John? All right, let's get to a Twitter question from Goal Line Stan. Do you think Georgia will try to run the ball more in the national championship game to control the tempo? You know, Goal Line Stan, what Georgia would like to, you know, this is something, too, that seems to be forgotten. Everybody talks about now like Georgia didn't show up. They had a 10-0 lead. The first quarter went perfect for Georgia. That's what they want to do. They want to get out front. They want to run the ball. They want to control the clock, and they want to make you play from behind. You know, Georgia did what they wanted to do early against Alabama. Alabama didn't stay to script, though. They came back and got the lead. Georgia does not want to play from behind. Ronnie, I think we know that. I mean, not that any team does, but as good as they are when they're leading, as we've seen the last 2 years against Alabama, if you put Bennett in a situation where he's got to throw the football, he's not as effective as a quarterback.
Yeah, and you have to give a lot of credit to the Alabama defense. After falling behind 10-0, they only gave up 14 points the rest of the game. They had some big-time stops down in the red zone, had an interception, turned them over on downs down there, forced Georgia 3 of 12 on 3rd downs in that game, held Georgia to 109 yards rushing. The Alabama defense had a really good game. I mean, and Bryce Young, the offense, obviously capitalized on the other side. So, again, yeah, Georgia probably would like to run the ball. They don't want to throw it 50 times like they did in the last game.
Not their game. All right, still to come in the show, our predictions. But up next, more phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. Give us a call. We'll be back after this. We're back here on TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. No truth to the rumor that they call me the COVID kid now. That's a nasty rumor. I'm done with that stuff, hopefully, for a while. All right, let's get right back out on the phone lines. And Rick in Regent Forest is with us. Hey, Rick.
Hey, folks. Appreciate you taking my call. I'd like for you to talk to me about the 2 signees from Thompson. And could the rush end, could he be Will Anderson's bookend? Thanks for taking my call, fellas.
All right. Well, first of all, the fact that Alabama has got a really good recruiting pipeline into the top program in the state now, which is Thompson High School in Alabaster with Coach Mark Freeman. Alexander and Fagans, the two guys you're talking about, yeah, absolutely. I think they'll have a chance to play early in their careers. They're both very talented. Alexander, a edge rusher, and Fagans, a defensive back.
Well, look, Alexander is a player that next year will be a true freshman. We expect Will probably be here one more year.
Mm-hmm.
Will he be a bookend next to Will? Next year might be tough. You've got Dallas Turner, you've got Drew Sanders. You got a lot of young players. I mean, you've got guys that we haven't even talked about. Keanu Coots, a young player. Quandarius Robinson's still around. We could go on naming these guys. Chris Braswell, so forth and so on. But, whether or not he'll be in that position next year is going to be a stretch. Now, Traquan Fagan's a guy that had a really good All-American game. Gary plays corner, plays safety. Guy that I think
physical kid.
As he develops, I think he's got a chance to be a player. Will it be next year? Maybe not. But I think he certainly, Gary, when you look to the future, he's a guy that certainly has a lot of potential.
All right, we are going to go ahead and get to the break. Thanks for the phone calls, the emails, and the tweets tonight. And when we come back, it's prediction time for the national championship game between Alabama and Georgia. All right, welcome back to TITV. It is time for our college football playoff national championship game predictions. Rodney, as always, we start with you.
Well, I'm going to say basically, Gary, the same thing I said in the SEC championship game. I really like Alabama's defense heading into this game. It's a unit that has been unsung. I mean, everybody's talking about Georgia's offense. They're talking about Alabama's offense. They're talking about the Georgia defense, how great it is. Nobody's talking about Nick Saban's defense. I think this defense comes up big. I think Alabama wins 28-20.
All right, Rod, we know last time in the SEC championship game I picked Georgia because I thought Georgia was going to win the game. I look at this game now, though, and you know what? I've been thinking all year maybe it's Georgia's time. And maybe it is. We'll find out on Monday night. But you know what? We know it's been Nick Saban's time since he's been in Tuscaloosa. He's ruined a lot of hopes and dreams and aspirations. He's done it to Georgia more times than once. I think Alabama does it again. They were good enough to beat him in Atlanta when all the odds were stacked against Alabama. As long as Nick Saban is coaching the Crimson Tide, I'm going to roll with Alabama in this one against Georgia. I've got it 31-27. Alabama pulls out what I think will be a great game on Monday night in Indianapolis. All right, that's going to do it for TITV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Thanks for watching. A reminder, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 on WVOA 23 or find it anytime at WVOA23.com or on Tide or Insider. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Next up for the Tide, Georgia in Indy. We'll be back on Tuesday of next week for a recap. Have a great night, everybody.